Zach, let's start it off with The Fall Guy, the newest movie that is coming from David Leitch, who I think you're a huge fan of. But also
I'm a little hit or miss with David Leitch, yeah.
What is it, 91 North, 97 North, if I'm not mistaken?
87 North.
87, thank you. Because I know they split with Chad, who also did John Wick with him, never having gotten the credit for the first movie, going and doing his stuff, and now David Leitch doing his own things, and they kind of have a split production company. I think you prefer Chad?
Yeah, I mean, they have. It's interesting because they did, as you mentioned, co-direct John Wick, but they do have kind of different approaches to how they do their action choreography. Where if you watch the rest of the John Wick movies, Chad Stahelski has this very kind of like focus on the physicality in these fights. Like, it's a lot about how the human body takes punishment, how they respond to a punch or get up from a fall, and it feels very like hard hitting in a way that I don't think David Leitch's films feel that hard hitting. There's almost more like a choreographed dance to the way that I think David Leitch does his action scenes. It's all like really
100%.
impressively timed, and everybody's like hitting their marks in the perfect moments, the way that they're able to like incorporate like a car rolling, and it's all feels like it's timed with perfect precision. And ultimately, I think I just respond a little bit more to Chad Stahelski's the way he goes about making action set pieces. But it doesn't mean that David Leitch is a slouch by any means.
Agreed. I think I also would have Chad a little bit ahead, because I think it was our boy Austin who had tweeted out the first image from John Wick when he punches, and it was about hearing the noise. I saw it before I read it, and I heard the noise too from when I saw it in Dolby. Mm-hmm. There's something about what Chad does that is great. And David is interesting because, how you were mentioning, he will do a lot of practicals, but then he does these CGI spectacles that makes you go like, wow, that's so cool and so okay, this is a Marvel movie. Oh, look, it's so cool and it's so real. Where you're breaking records with a practical effect. I don't mind that, but it's probably not my favorite type of action. I like it when it stays grounded like a John Wick, as crazy as it gets. Whereas here, there is a lot of CGI in Bullet Train, obviously Deadpool, and there is a lot in The Fall Guy as well.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about it?
There's this whole extended sequence in the middle of the movie that's like a chase happening on a truck, and the thing sort of being dragged behind the truck, and it's
like
a
the
very
Flash
cool.
Batman?
Exactly, like she's shovel surfing or something like that.
Right?
And it's a very cool idea. When we were at South by Southwest, they had a photo booth set up where we could like insert ourselves into that scene, and it looked about just as good as it does in the movie. Very green screen, very like he's not actually in peril in this moment. And like,
that's how they shot it. They used that booth.
They used that photo booth. I don't know, man. It like for all of the like hype about like this is a ode to stunt people and this is our dedication to the craft of stunt work, I didn't really find myself being blown away by a lot of the stunts in the movie. There were a couple cool ones. There is a fall in particular towards the end of the movie that I think is beautiful, like a gorgeous shot and like a gorgeous depiction of like the human body. But that CGI element that you're talking about, I think kind of it got in the way of some of the bullet train scenes for me, and it maybe like lessened the impact of some moments that could have been wildly entertaining in Fall Guy.
For you. I like the fall from the opener, because I think Ryan said he did that one. That one was sick. The way that it just gives you like that whole vertigo and he falls for it. The premise in here is that he plays a stuntman who is like really in love with his camera operator for most of his movies. He's been the stunt guy for a very particular actor. I forget the character's name.
Johnson.
Aaron Taylor Johnson's guy. And they have them both looking alike with the blondish tips and stuff.
I thought there was also a little bit of McConaughey in how Aaron Taylor Johnson plays the guy. Yeah,
easily. And the boy was ripped. If there was anybody, I think Ryan had the arms, but this man was chiseled in all of his scenes. He's kind of like a goof though. The Aaron Taylor Johnson character is really just there letting everybody else do the work for the most part. You kind of get that right off the top, and it's Ryan who's always doing all of the crazy stunts. In particular, the Fall Guy title comes from a TV series in where it was like a bounty hunter going after people, which they kind of play into here. But they paid all the money for it because they really like the double, triple, however Kendrick can do quintuple entendres that you get with it. The fact that the stunt guy who takes the fall was known as the Fall Guy since back in the day. The fact that there is a crime story that's happening here after they're shooting another movie where an incident happens and maybe someone's being set up to be the Fall Guy.
Right.
Then it's also a rom-com, and I think that's where I wasn't expecting it. I thought it was going to be more of a thriller, and like we said, this crime almost investigation.
Yeah, mystery maybe, or like a de facto Nice Guys sequel kind of.
There were moments. There were moments where I felt that. I was like, okay, he's in the hotel, the motel, and he's like slumming it out there. But it really is like an hour just fully if you take out all the action, because it's 2 hours long. It is a rom-com between him and Emily Blunt's character, who then gets to do the next movie as she goes on up to become a director, doing like that thing had a Dune soundtrack. It looked like, I don't know, Mad Max in the desert, in space. It was a weird movie. Sadly, it did look like some stuff that we get on Netflix. It looked like Rebel Moon. It looked like
a little Rebel Moon-ish for sure. It had the Dune score, but definitely the Zack Snyder kind of like aesthetic.
Did it all blend in for you, or did you feel a difference like I did in terms of when it was stopping to be this rom-com and, you know, going through the movie that they're shooting in the movie to the crime thriller that I actually thought was decent the way that they set it up?
Yeah, I mean, it does feel a little bit like they've tacked together a couple different movies, and I'm not sure all of them are like equally levels of good. I actually really enjoyed the rom-com elements, partially because just the dynamic between Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt is so great. Like, if you saw the Oscars, you saw that they have incredible chemistry, or their recent appearance in the SNL opening monologue together. But like, they just have a real ease doing banter opposite each other, and I think a lot of the moments that they're given are pretty fun. There's this whole sequence in which Ryan Gosling's character is getting set on fire, where I think they do a good job of kind of like telling you the story of the characters while telling you the story of the movie at the same time. I think that some of the elements of like the behind the scenes of this film production were a little bit weaker, oddly enough. The whole element of like trying to put this film together, and there's all these elements going wrong. It just sort of it felt like we were only finding out about that when they were telling us about that, if that makes any sense, like sort of inserting it in. And I don't know, maybe I wanted a deeper backstory for the crime stuff, because that's ultimately what we're spending a lot of the time with, and it just sort of it's a lot of Ryan Gosling's character going from A to B to C. I mean, that's the thing, is like the bad version of this movie feels like it could have been a Ryan Reynolds vehicle. And I think Ryan Gosling just elevates this so much that like, even when I felt the story was a little bit inert and a little bit slow moving, he's just is such a magnetic presence on screen. This film feels bioengineered to like elicit a true movie star performance, and he absolutely delivers.
Isn't it crazy that they had The Rock as their first choice, and that felt
Really? I couldn't.
Goodness.
Yeah, that would have been such a stiff movie.
Then they were saying that's what it would have been, a very 80s, you know, take on that. And I agree. This is like the Nice Guys in a full blockbuster mode.
Totally.
And sadly, like the Nice Guys, they made just about as much money. Why is this movie $130 million?
Yeah. Well,
I get people not going out to the theater, but like, come on. That's too much.
I think that's really the biggest issue with it, because it's not like the movie made like no money, right? It still came in number one at the weekend with $28.5 million. I saw somebody point out something interesting that so this is the opening weekend of May, which a lot of people associate as the beginning of summer movie season. And I believe it's been 19 years in a row now that the opening week in May has sort of just been taken over by a Marvel movie. So reliably, for almost 2 solid decades, we've had the biggest franchise in Hollywood opening a new movie. Of course, that opening weekend May is going to have a lot of like big box office hits. This is a movie that's not coming in with any IP really that people are familiar with. Like it is based on a TV show, but I don't think anybody really knows that. It's got movie stars, but I don't think it has the same kind of like, Oppenheimer, Barbie kind of like hype machine behind it. I feel like 28.5 is a really solid opening that we would be celebrating if it wasn't for the movie costing $150 million. It's just bloat. It's a huge bloated budget.
That's exactly the amount of money that a movie was going to make in this weekend. So it's like, why have it be so much if you knew it wasn't going to bring back that much? Either pick a different day where you could get more. But again, to me, there's so much about budgets that people don't understand because at that point, this is a stuntman movie and the stuntmen are everywhere. If they already got paid for it, so be it then. They got their money. If they're looking to make a sequel, which is why they paid so much for the budget and the rights, I mean, I don't see you getting that there. Again, The Nice Guys was one where it got trumped out by Angry Birds. So it wasn't able to get a sequel to follow it up. This doesn't really have competition. I don't see it getting legs, especially with some of the really big blockbusters opening next week, like you're mentioning, that come with IP, Apes and such. I don't know. I just think it was a lot of money for what to me is an action movie, but it really is an action rom-com. And rom-com should not cost that much.
That's the thing. And it just sort of the scope of the project feels a little bit smaller than the kind of stuff that tends to be like driving audiences in big amounts to the theater like that. I don't know if you saw people discussing the idea of like whether or not The Fall Guy demands to be seen in a movie theater. And while I do think it's like a really fun movie theater experience, when we're talking about demands to be seen in the movie theater, it doesn't have like the epic's vision of something like Oppenheimer with the Hoyte van Hoytema cinematography and the beautiful score to it. It doesn't have, even the scope of something like Dune, which I think does demand that sort of IMAX treatment. I think that's kind of ultimately the things that make people really motivated to go see something opening weekend. Look for those premium large format screens. And maybe it's, if you're going to make a movie for $150 million, maybe you have to incorporate some of those elements too.
Didn't they? They're both Barbenheimer.
True.
They keep bringing it up.
True.
I'm trying to think, what else could they have done with the marketing? They were at the Oscars. They were at SNL. They've done everything right. I see Devesh saying people always complain we don't get these types of films anymore, but then they don't show up. I think they did. That's the 20-something mil. Yeah. It's the rest of the people that don't. Like, we forget the people who are vocal about it, that is their dollars. Everybody else don't care because you're right. It needs to be this event. It needs to be more. It needs to be this cultural moment or else people have been set. This is a Universal movie, right? Universal's the one who set the precedent 40 days after. We're going to release it on VOD. People are going to wait for VOD.
Absolutely.
I agree with you. It is worth, I think it's worth going out to theaters to catch it because of the action sequences that are in there. But you're not going to push people to go out there when they're probably already saving their money for the next thing. People don't realize you can get AMC. So unless we push that on them, like the A-list, they are saving their $20 for whatever that big movie it's going to be, They also got time constraints. They're going to pick only one movie. And I think they've already set what it's going to be for the month. And this is a streaming movie for most people, which is sad. But, I mean... definitely. I don't know what other way to fix it. I do want to talk about some of the other actors that are in there. Winston Duke comes in, and he's like the guy who's just always pitching movie quotes, which is cute. Yeah. But probably not the best movie quoter that I've seen this year. I still have to give that to Sugar.
Yeah, true. And that's probably the best thing that we can say about Sugar. But I also feel like Sugar's selection of films was a little bit better. I mean, maybe it's telling. I think like most of the things that Winston Duke is referencing in The Fall Guy are like classic 3-star, 3.5-star movies. And that's sort of how I feel about Fall Guy.
Damn, bro. Don't do that to Last of the Mohicans.
Okay, Last of the Mohicans is good.
Don't do that to the Rocky Balboa quote. There was one point, though, where I'm like, this man just read the quotes and was like, okay. And actually, I was like,
it does not sound like he memorized that one. Yeah,
exactly.
But I thought he had a fun. I thought he was fun in the movie. He gets like a fun sequence too. Yeah.
Stephanie Sue comes in. I didn't even realize she was in this movie. I felt like maybe I had seen her in some of the marketing and stuff, but she plays the PA to what would be Aaron Taylor's A-list character.
Yeah.
I thought she was funny. She has like one specific sequence that leads into a car chase that that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought she was good, but I also feel like her part of the movie, you can really feel them cutting around stuff, right? Because it feels like they're really just clipping moments together, and there's not a lot of time to breathe with her character. It does kind of feel like they're maybe setting her up to be a bigger part of if there is a Fall Guy sequel.
Oh, damn. Yeah. Because one of the things, without getting too spoilers, is she asks for a certain demand when negotiating. And if you pay attention towards the end of the movie, they kind of call back to that. That's a good point. And then the last person, I guess technically two more people. Teresa Palmer comes out of nowhere to do a bit that then didn't make sense.
I mean, when the movie ended, I asked Caitlin if Teresa Palmer was actually in it. It happened so briefly, but like it's just such a strange scene, and it feels like pretty unmotivated too.
I did not get it. That was very weird. It was so weird. I'm moving on. Hannah Waddingham was fun. She was goofy in it. I think that's one of the characters who, especially early on, leaves a couple of hints, even literally because she's leaving like mementos around. And I thought that she was kind of like an interesting character in terms of like what producers are involved with in terms of Hollywood productions, especially with her kind of being like a Feige. Because to her, it's like the directors don't matter. It's her production, and everything that's being done speaks to her films. And I don't know, I thought she played it well. But overall,
yeah, it was an interesting character too. I like the sort of like constant Diet Coke sipping.
Yeah, Fall Guy was a decent movie. I think most people aren't being convinced, obviously, from the box office numbers to go see it in theaters, but it is worth seeing in theaters, or at least catching once it's out. I'd give it the junior price.
Yeah, I'm probably like around 3.5 stars with it because it's a really fun time. Feels a little bit like thin at parts, right? Like it's not really about much. It's just a good time at the movie theater, but it is a very good time at the movie theater.